So let me just introduce myself real quick, and then we will introduce our guests. So hi everyone, my name is Elena. So I'm a managing partner at Western, where we're looking to transform the way people learn and really just create more opportunities for us to be more productive and take care of our overall well-being. And a big part of that well-being is our financial well-being. And in this case, we are referring to, that feeling where it's essentially about being secure, right? Because financial well-being affects our mental health, it affects our work, our performance at work, as well as our relationships, right? So it's beyond just the finances. And if you constantly experience stress about how to pay your monthly bills or kind of get from day to day, or perhaps for so many who are in situations where perhaps you've lost your job, and how do you now manage your finances with what you have? So we're going to be looking at some of these sort of things, and we have a few questions we're going to be asking our guest speaker. And our guest speaker today, let me introduce her. So her name is Zoë Cousens. She has over 30 years of experience in finance, having started her career as one of the first women to work in the London Stock Exchange in 1986. She has worked in Dubai, London, and Guernsey as an investment manager and director. She now runs her own consultant firm. It's called Castellet Consulting, an independent investment audit service, and she has recently founded Talking Money Matters, a financial wellness program for employers to offer their staff to empower them to make informed financial decisions. She has won several professional awards and has become a regular speaker at international events. So I'm really excited to have her. So Zoe, you can go ahead and come on camera. We also have, of course, my business partner, Yvonne Palomino, who comes from an ed tech background and doing the things with us in Western. Let me just go ahead and fix my screen a bit, just a moment. How are you guys doing?
Hi, Elena, thank you very much.
Welcome, welcome. All right. So before we actually get started, I want to give a quick poll to our audience. So for our audience, you will have a question that's going to pop up on your screens. So go ahead and just click the answer. All right, we have the answers coming in. Okay. So we have, so do you feel that financial stress is affecting your job, health, or relationships? So far, we had 71% of you said yes, 29% said no. So it's good. That's a nice balance, right? So that's good to have some people on board who are doing all right. What about the rest of you? There's still a few people that didn't yet answer. Yes. So we have. So now we're at a perfect 70-30 split. 70% of you feel that it does affect your job, health, and relationships, and 30 do not. So for those of you who feel it's affecting, this is a great webinar. We're going to be talking about how we can manage through this, how can you align your finances and well-being in this current situation. And for those of you who are not as affected, perhaps you'll learn some new tips and tricks and how to continue making sure to maintain the financial well-being. All right, wonderful. All right, so Yvonne, Zoe, let's kick us off. First of all, can we, Yvonne, maybe you can also kick us off in terms of what is financial well-being essentially? Can we define financial well-being before we ask the first question?
Listen, in order to answer to that question, I will need to refer a little bit more to my personal background. So I grew up until the age of 15 in a developing country. I grew up in Latin America, in Peru. By the way, are you hearing the echo right now?
No, I'm okay. Are you guys hearing the echo on the guests? I think I'm okay, yeah.
Okay, so I grew up until the age of 15 in Peru, in Latin America, and post this time I grew up in Switzerland, which is a country that is considered quite wealthy. If you compare, in fact, the GDP of both countries. So you have a ratio of 1 to 6, in fact, so between Peru and Switzerland. Now, what is fascinating about the relationship with wealth is that even though we have a ratio of wealth that is 6 times bigger with Switzerland, the number of people with anxiety, mental health problems is higher in the developing country, and the ratio becomes, in fact, 10 times more. So Switzerland has an incidence of mental well-being impact higher than a country that is constantly struggling. So for me, there is a correlation between the impact of happiness of that wealth can deliver to people. The expectations are higher. When we look at numbers like just pre-COVID, we got a hang of reports commenting that 34% of people who are blue collars working in big corporations have problems of mental health due to their financial situation. It is quite amazing that even though they have enough to survive, they don't feel okay with their financial situation. Now, it makes me think a little bit about us as human beings. We have different levels of needs, and if we think about the Maslow pyramid, where in fact we need to be caring first about our survival, and then we need to be taking care of about our status. Wealth influence, in fact, our perception on where do we stand. The more we have covered our primal needs, in fact, the more we are taking care of what is less important and that we believe make us more happy. So the financial well-being comes from the fact of putting ourselves already in the perspective that soon we are going to be having more money. We extrapolate our happiness. We think that the more money we are going to get, the more the happier we're going to become. Interesting enough, there is a study that shows that that there is a limit. There is a correlation between wealth and happiness up to a number. In fact, there is some research that was done in the University of Stanford that shows that when you earn up to $75,000 in a developing country, you have a real correlation between happiness and wealth. After the $75,000 per year, there is no more extra happiness. In fact, it plateaus. So there is a limit where wealth contributes to our well-being.
Thank you for that. Zoe, so what do you think? How big is the actual problem? So he kind of gave us a nice sort of intro to what we're talking about, but from your perspective, from financial wellness perspective and your vast experience in the field, tell us a bit more about, what are the insights about the current state of many adults around the world?
Yeah, well, I wasn't particularly surprised actually at the results of your poll, Elena, because 2030 is and of course, actually, a lot of the people who are listening in, there's a bit of an echo from here. Have you got that too?
Yes, there is an echo.
Okay, maybe I don't hear it, but maybe Yvonne, maybe if we mute ourselves, it should be okay from her side. So maybe we just mute while you speak.
Okay, thank you. Because I was hearing myself twice, which yeah. So I mean, at least 50% in any of the reports that you read about, financial wellness, will say at least 50% of people do, are suffering with this. And unfortunately, of course, since the beginning of the year, for obvious reasons, this has increased quite substantially due to a lot of uncertainty. I really think that the most important thing is financial education, because a lot of people are falling into debt, irrespective really of their job situation, whether, as Yvonne says, they're earning decent money or not. It's a lack of knowledge about how to manage it. And I don't say that with any, for any reason other than, it's something we're not taught in schools. And unfortunately, it's such a massive topic because it affects our whole lives. And yes, some people, will automatically have a leaning towards knowing how to manage their money. But yes, in my long experience, I've been surprised at how many people don't really even do the basics, such as budgeting, which is a very easy thing to do. Money in, money out. And as you've mentioned to me before, Elena, obviously it's very important to save and to invest if you can. But that's not even the first step, because if you don't know how much money you've got left over at the end of the month, then, how can you possibly make that plan? So for me, it's all about, it doesn't have to be a massive learning, in-depth experience, just some basic knowledge, as I say, so that you know how much money is coming in and out, and whether you can afford to save. Because, of course, if you have got debt, then you're probably much better off paying that down before you start trying to save. And I've seen many people, and I love it when people start savings plans, of course, but who only do them for a few months because they realize they can't afford to do them, and so yeah, I think there's a lot more opportunity now to learn about money. We're all much more aware of it. I'm certainly doing, as you know, quite a lot to try to raise people's awareness of what they should be doing. And yeah, I think it's going to become even more important now. And there are different types of advice. We were just discussing something before. Different people have different views. And so just a little bit of knowledge can help you to make the right decision for you as well. And I think, because we don't have that knowledge generally, we tend to let things slide, or, we don't really get, how we should be managing our money.
I love the point about that, you make it work in a way that makes sense for you. And what I also love you mentioned is that oftentimes we're so busy and worried about how can we invest and how can we make money, but let's go back to the basics and say, first of all, do we know what comes in and what comes out? Do we keep the basic accounting tools, right? And I'll be curious to hear also from you guys. I know, Yvonne, you also know a bit about it, but what are some basic accounting tools that individuals can use to track their expenses? Except that, I've used the old school Excel sheets for the longest time, and I'm now going towards technology, thanks to Yvonne. Now I'm using apps, but so absolutely, it's a really, really great point. And for our audience, guys, I see your questions, so keep them coming. I will be asking Zoe questions towards the end, so just drop your questions in the question box as we go along, and we'll get to those absolutely. So yeah, very, very, very good.
I use an Excel spreadsheet myself because it's easy. It's easy for me, because I've done it for so many years. And you only need, a couple of columns, and that's why I say it's easy. You've got, money in, which typically, unfortunately, is only one lump sum, unless you, earning some various bits of money from elsewhere. But for most of us, it'll be our salary, right? And then, just another list of your outgoings, rent or mortgage, bills. It's important to, try and think of absolutely everything. But there's any amount of sample budgets online, of course. If you Google, then you can find anything that would suit you best. But it's really very simple. So, when you use the word accounting, it's not even that, difficult, if you see what I mean. It's just a column put in, and then, a list of things that are coming out. And then hopefully you've got a positive balance left at the end of the month. And, then you've got a clear idea. And it doesn't always suit some people. They don't really like to do this. But even if you just have, your main bills, or, for example, let's use a Dubai example, when your trade license is coming out annually, just, to have the dates in as well, which is very important. Because, it's very easy to, as you say, we're all busy all the time. And then suddenly you get a huge bill for 35,000 dirhams or something because you've forgotten your trade license needs renewing. And that can completely just throw everything out of the window. So at least make a note, of those big ticket items, as you would say. and try your hardest. And then I think if you start from there and gradually get into the habit of it, you can start to add more things, and you start to be aware of things like petrol, haircuts and stuff. You know, you can go into as much depth as you like, but it's definitely the place to start, because if you don't start there, well, you know, you wouldn't know where to go, basically.
And Yvonne, something here you want to add?
Yes,
I saw you.
I just wanted to build on something that I really love on what Zoe was mentioning, is the need for education. And she has highlighted that the how to start is something quite important. Now, in our specific practice, help people, in fact, deal with their well-being, we often discuss about the sense of the purpose, the why. Why do we need this specific amount of money? What are we going to be doing with that? Because there is a correlation in between the how we are using that money in order to have happiness. Are we going to do something that it will give us some automatic pleasure? Is it going to be something that will be pleasure because we are doing something for the society, we are contributing to our families? The sense of purpose with money is something that we very often disregard, and is part of also of our education, of understanding what are we going to be using this money that we're going to save or we're going to be investing, so that we feel fulfilled. In fact, we feel this sense that we have a purpose as human beings.
And you're exactly right, Ivan, because that's where we need to have goals. You know, because if we don't set ourselves goals, then, you know, we've got nowhere to go, if you see what I mean. We don't know what we're saving for, so we're probably not really going to do it either. So whether it's, you know, a holiday, or for future, you know, school fees, or a house extension, or, you know, whatever it is, we need to have, you know, those goals, because if you haven't got anything to aim for, then you're very unlikely to keep it going. And also having those sorts of goals helps to prevent impulse buying, you know. And again, Eleanor, we were just saying, of course, that, you know, with all the sales that are on at the moment, with all the huge discounts, it's all very tempting. But I think if you can sort of think to yourself, apart from the fact, do I need it? You know, if you can think to yourself, well, do I need this new T-shirt, or should I put it towards the holiday, you know, a family holiday? And if you can try and think, well, actually, you know, the family holiday is something, you know, that I'm much more keen on than just having another T-shirt. Everyone, you know, again, deals with it differently. But if you can sort of have some sort of mindset that works for you, something like that, just to remind yourself of, well, you know, that 50 dirhams, you know, could have gone towards my holiday. And of course, you know, small amounts, you know, do add up quickly. You know, where we can be too dismissive and think it's only 50 dirhams, you know, so I'm just going to do it. No, try and change your mindset a little bit and think how, you know, if you save 50 dirhams a day on, you know, not buying coffee or whatever, you know, that's a substantial amount over a month, you know. And I think we need to just try to change our mindsets in that sort of way.
You know, I just had this connection moment. So in our practice, of course, we talk a lot about, you know, compound effect. There's those small daily things we can do to our well-being, etc. And we actually use the example of the compound effect from finances, right? So it's taking that little bit that adds to big results. And the thing is, like, you're absolutely right. So if we don't have plans, if we don't understand, then that 50 dirhams, that 100 dirhams, you know, it's all right. That's just 100 dirhams, right? But if you add it up, and like you said, just to understand what's going where, so when you see how much is going out and what it's going to, even as simple as we were talking earlier before we got it online, is about subscriptions. How much do we spend on subscriptions, on apps, on I don't know, whatever it is, and do we really need them? Like, there's so many different apps, so why don't you use the free version, right? And Yvonne is much better at this than I am. He's always like, Elena, you know, there's a free version for this. I don't know, he keeps me in check. But and it really is just about that. And another thing comes to mind is that the whole saying, you know, we are spending money we don't have to impress people we don't like with money or buying things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And that is also very much, you know, living in Dubai. It's also the mindset that we need to be very cautious about.
Yes.
So
absolutely. That's a lot in Dubai. You're absolutely right. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a culture, you know, among some of the expats to keep up with the Joneses, as we say.
Yes.
And yes, and so a lot of people, you know, when I set up the Women's Investment Network in Dubai, which was to help to educate women specifically about their finances, so many of them were just coming to me in debt, you know, which is such a shame. And yeah, unfortunately, in this scenario that we're in now as well, you know, it's even more important to be keeping control of our finances. And also, you know, when you get to my sort of age, you know, well, I'm not going to retire for many years, but I'm certainly of retirement age in most countries. And you know, you've got to start saving early if you want to, you know, continue to live in the manner to which you are accustomed, again, as we say here, you know. And people aren't saving enough for their retirement. And also the other thing to bear in mind there is, of course, what we call the inverted sort of triangle now in terms of demographic. So what I mean by that is that, you know, when pension schemes and so on were set up, you know, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 years ago, you had a lot of young people in the workplace who were able, you know, to support a small number of older people. Now that's completely reversed and is a massive problem. Not to pick on Japan, but it is a place that's got probably the biggest problem with this. Very few young people coming through to support an ever-aging, of course, we're living longer, you know, an ever-aging population. So we have to, you know, we have to bear in mind, and you know, the younger you are, the more you have to bear in mind now that you must start saving, because will countries and governments be offering pensions? Will they be financially able to? Where will this money come from? With, you know, so many people, older people not working, and you know, fewer young people to support them. And a lot of people listening to me saying this will think, oh, it's ages away, I don't have to worry about that yet. Oh, you absolutely do. You really do, you know, because, well, and to Ivan's point as well, you know, that you feel more comfortable, obviously, the more you have in the bank, and it does make you happier, obviously, to have more money. But we're not just talking about money to spend now, and even going back to my point about holidays and house extensions, we've really got to look more towards the future. And I think that, you know, this is a cause of massive financial stress that people are beginning to realise. Not only, you know, have I got the short and medium term goals to try to save for, you really have to look for the longer term goals as well. So you don't have to worry about how you're going to survive, basically, when you're, well, effectively too old to work. Because again, you know, when pension schemes were set up, you know, we were living maybe until, you know, our late 50s, early 60s then. But of course now we might live to 100, and that's no exaggeration. And so 40, you might have 40 years in retirement now. That can be as long as your actual career. So that's, you know, retirement planning is of massive importance as well, and not something to be pushed down the road at all.
Yeah, Ivan, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to add a point. So now, when you were talking, Zoe, I was thinking about that. On top of the gap that we have in terms of education on financial planning and how to handle our well-being, there is also this gap that we have in communication. Not so many people are aware that, for instance, in the US, only 28% of the population has like a buffer of 3 months of savings in the bank. So most of the people have less than 3 months in order to survive. So if they lose their job now, they are in big trouble, right? And we always tend to compare with others and say, oh, this person is spending more, they are wealthier than us, and that incentivizes us, in fact, to follow them. but most of these people are living out of debt, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right. And we do make this assumption that, you know, people are wealthy and we need to keep up with them. But a lot of the time, you're absolutely right. People are just piling it on the credit cards, you know, and of course, they're not going to tell you that. You know, you won't know that. We do make this assumption, yeah, that people are doing much better than they are. So, yeah, again, it comes down to, you know, really narrowing in, you know, and concentrating on what's best for you personally, or best for you as a family, and not worrying about everybody else. Because, yeah, I think we'd probably be quite surprised if we really knew what was going on behind the scenes sometimes.
Absolutely.
And just to kind of get us into, so for the audience, also drop your questions. I have just a couple of questions left for Zoe and Yvonne, but just to get into some maybe action points. So keeping in mind, perhaps, so some of the audience that we have today, expats based in Dubai, right? So the financial planning, there's not a lot of models for some of us, like, for example, coming from the States, you know, I have to do certain things in the States, I cannot do them here. There's no option to even begin saving. So what does it look like, you know, that financial planning for me as an expat in Dubai, or for somebody who doesn't have that, you know, secure, I don't know, government to invest in, or even investment. So one of the questions is, you know, how do we utilize the money we have using investments, for example? So, you know, and what does it look like? Does it look the same for everybody, or is it somebody who's in their 20s, 30s, 40s? It looks different. So do we need to be a little bit more aggressive when we're a little bit older? Do we need to be less aggressive when we're younger? What does that look like in action points that for those that are listening to this?
To be honest, and to your point about risk, in actual fact, yeah, you need to take as much risk as you can afford to when you're in your 20s and 30s, because there's actually an opportunity cost to not taking that risk. So by which I mean, you know, if you're in your 20s and 30s, and arguably you could almost say into your 40s these days, you know, this is your opportunity to build your pot. You are not going to build a pot by having it in cash, which is at 0% anyway now. So in effect, with inflation, you know, actually going backwards. So, you know, and I've seen this many, many times. People who went to a financial advisor when they were quite young, and the advisor wrongly, you know, it said to them, oh, you know, just leave it in cash. Maybe, you know, their interest rates were reasonable at the time, but all the same, you know, the opportunity cost I'm talking about is the opportunity to be invested in markets. And you know, you can look at any graphs again online and have a look at a comparison between cash, bonds, which is effectively government or company debt, and stocks and shares. And stocks and shares have been more volatile. In other words, obviously will go up and down more. But you've got plenty of time to ride out all those ups and downs with the market. And so, yeah, what I mean is that, you know, if you're just in cash on your graph, you're just going to be just doing this. But if you're in equities over time or shares, you know, you will be doing this, but you'll end up much higher up. So you really need to be taking some sort of risk because you can afford to. And I'm assuming, of course, that you leave the money where it is. You know, this is long-term investing. You know, you should never really invest in markets if it's for less than 3 years as a very minimum, but preferably 5. Because, of course, if you're investing and then markets suddenly go down and you need the money, then obviously, you know, you obviously will not get back what you put in. So you have to think of it as a longer term thing. So this goes back to my point about goals. You know, if this is a long-term goal, then by all means invest in stocks and shares. And I mean, there are some great investment funds where you can invest in the top companies in the world, you know, so you can have a fund, if you like, of you know, Google and Apple and you know, all the top, Tesla I suppose now as well, and you know, the top companies in the world. And healthcare obviously is going to be a really important sector to be investing in now. So and the other thing actually, which I always recommend to people to start as soon as possible, sort of investment savings plans, and you can do them for very, very small amounts every month. Of course, this is a win-win situation. If you're doing regular small amounts, we call it pound or dollar cost averaging. So the reason I say it's a win-win situation is that you can be happy when the markets are going up, because of course you can see that the value of your investment is going up, but you can actually be doubly happy when the market is going down, because of course when the market falls, it's like shares are on sale. Rather like the discounts in the shops at the moment. And so you get twice the amount, of shares, for example, for your 100 dirhams a month or whatever it is, probably a bit more. And so you used the word compound quite rightly, Elena. So of course those ups and downs and being able to buy shares cheaper as you go along with your regular amounts compounds up over time in the most amazing way. It's definitely a very, very efficient way of saving. To the point about, being an expat and saving in Dubai, it's difficult. And to be honest, I don't have the sort of magic bullet answer to that, unfortunately. That there are some financial advisors there. The key thing to look at is the charging. Because, of course, particularly at the moment, if you're going to be charged 5% of your money to do this plan, but the markets are only anticipating a return of 3%, it's going to take you a long time, to get that money back. So charging there's a whole different topic, really, but that is what will have the most impact on your savings, is any charges that are being taken. Now, sometimes we need to go to somebody for advice, and obviously we'd be happy to pay for it. But just to be wary of the actual charges, because they vary quite considerably. So that should be top of your list of research if you're going to different advisors. Sometimes, the banks aren't always the best places to go, because they can be a bit high charging as well. But, we're in strange times at the moment. And I think from a security point of view, you might want to speak to the bank, even about a savings account. But, we're getting no money on savings accounts. But I would shop around, actually, shop around and see what you can find. But I can't really give a direct answer and say, go to this firm or that firm. Because again, they all offer different things, which, you've got to find what's the most suitable for you as well. Certainly try to do some saving. And at the end of the day, if it suits you to open a new savings account, even if it's pretty much earning you zero at the moment, and you can afford to put 500 dirhams a month into it, you are actually making a massive step in the right direction anyway, because you have started your savings pot. And it will grow over time. And we don't have many options at the moment because of the low interest rates, which are going to be with us for quite some time.
Yeah. So it sounds like if you're more in 20s, 30s, you can be a little bit, or early 30s, you can be a little bit more risky in terms of your investments. And because it's long term, and we know that I think it's the 10 years that the market will go up and down. So if you invest, let's say for 5 to 10 years, you're almost guaranteed you'll make your money back and some interest on top of it, because it's long-term investment. What about for retirement? So those that are in their 40s or 50s or even above. So what about retirement? What are some, planning for retirement? What some advice do you have for these individuals?
Yes, well, we should be more cautious, of course, because we haven't got the time to, to ride out if there's a big fall in the markets. Although, to be honest, we've already seen an amazing recovery from the March falls. But of course, we never know what's around the corner, and we've all just experienced that in a very big way. But you do need to be more cautious, because you just haven't got the time to ride out a big, market fall. And so, again, cash is just not earning us anything, and it's a difficult question for investment people at the moment. Most would recommend in the US, US Treasuries, or in the UK, UK gilts, which is debt which is issued by those governments. And so to explain that in clearer terms, say that the US government wants to borrow some money to build a few new highways. They could go to one of the banks, but instead of that, an alternative actually, which may be cheaper for them, is to go to the market. So to us, to you and I, and to the institutions, and to say we want to raise $100 million, and so we will. Us as the market, we will lend them that money. You can buy it in small amounts of even $10,000, and we lend them that money. In return, the government will pay us a fixed coupon or interest rate, so say 2%, which would actually be quite nice these days, for a fixed period of time, and then at the end of that time, you get the money back. And of course, so this is quite attractive if you're a cautious investor. For one thing, you've got that guaranteed 2%, and you're guaranteed your money back at the end. You won't have that volatility going up and down because it's a different type of investment, because it's a loan. You're not dependent on a company. Let's take Apple again. Apple shares going up and down. You're not dependent on that company doing well. You are dependent on the US government not going bankrupt. But hey, let's hope. If the US goes bankrupt, I mean, some people might argue with the amount of debt it is, but anyway, that's a completely different topic. But you get what I'm saying. It's a safer type of investing. And so when you're in your 40s and 50s and getting older, you should really be moving into that sort of government debt, for example.
And so to be a little bit more cautious than if you're 40s and 50s, and if you are coming from countries where you can to an extent trust the government, right, then maybe go through the government sort of setup that they have. And if you don't, then maybe look into investing, but investing in safe places. And as you mentioned, there's so many different firms that can help you invest your money in different places, where there, as an expat, you can invest in different stocks and etc. in a safe way. And it's just about finding what works for you and doing your shopping around, of course. So and in the UAE, just to be careful, I think that there's a lot of people always calling and saying, I'm a financial advisor and investor. So if you can go through referrals, it's much better. Maybe we can also, if we have some suggestions, we can share with our audience as a follow-up email. We can send them a couple of maybe ideas or at least a good, safe resources for them to search for those firms. So maybe something that we can share with them as well. Yvonne, you wanted to add something?
No, but I would be interested, because you have the slide that shows the video about what is the perspective, like if we think back a couple of years ago when we were in university, what was our perspective in terms of financial planning and well-being. And I find I'm quite nostalgic of these times of believing that everything was possible. And I wanted to share it with the audience, Elena. I don't know if it's going to be working.
Yeah, this is a good one for us to reminisce, and for those of you who have kids, this is a good one for them to show them, maybe to prevent them from making mistakes we make. All right, let's watch this video, and if you can't hear me, just let us know. Just drop me in the chat box. It's just a couple minutes.
Financial wellness. I think you reach it only when you become a real adult, and I have not reached that point, so I cannot tell you.
Financial wellness for me is being comfortable with your financial situation and focusing on your studies.
Lack of stress when it comes to your funds. Like, you don't have to be worrying about every single cent that you're spending. Being smart about how much you save, how much you spend, knowing what your limit is when you're spending. You're financially sufficient to support yourself, having enough for like emergencies, because anything can happen, especially when you're a student studying away from home. You don't know what will come up. Being able to save, enjoy yourself, and afford enough to survive, to have that balance in your life, that would be financial wellness.
It's a good video. I want to actually drop a poll for our audience as well. So I want to drop another poll to you guys, and just ask this. So be honest, it's anonymous, we won't know what it is. But I'm launching a poll, and what it says is, I could handle a major unexpected expense right now. So if you agree completely, you can handle it very well, somewhat, very little, or not at all. So let us know where are you? Okay, we have the answers coming in. About a little bit over half of you have answered. All right, we're going up. Okay, so far we're saying somewhat. Okay, not bad, not bad. So I could handle a major unexpected expense right now. We still have a couple more people left to answer. I'll give you just a few more seconds and then I'll show the poll. So far, majority is in almost half of you said somewhat. Second best rated is very little. So let me close the poll. I can share the results. You should be able to see the results now. So Yvonne, Zoe, these are the results. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, actually, that's quite positive. I'm very pleased to see that, because pretty much half of you would probably be able to manage, which is very good. I thought we might have been more back at the 70-30, you know, not at all. So that's very encouraging, to be honest. So yeah, that's great.
I was in good shape, guys. We got some good people on the webinar today. Great. So so you guys drop in your questions. I had a couple, so I've answered those, I believe. So
something else actually, just to add, if you don't mind, Elaine, to what we were saying, because you mentioned about people cold calling. And I think, you know, again, it's very important to remember, and I think I hope this is helpful, but, you know, would you buy anything from anybody who cold called you? I mean, even if you're buying a television, let's use that as an example, you wouldn't just invest whatever you're going to spend on a TV with someone just cold calling you. You would do what I was suggesting before, you know, and research the market. You would, wouldn't you? You'd go and you check, well, you know, how much you value this one is for your money and what functions it does and everything. And, you know, it never ceases to amaze me. Senior professional people, even, you know, in legal or financial world, who've said to me that they've handed over their life savings to someone who cold called them. It's extraordinary. And sometimes, you know, they say, well, I know I needed to do it. I'm so busy, you know, I haven't got around to doing it. So I felt, somebody actually said to me, I was just relieved that somebody was taking it off my hands. And I said, well, they absolutely have taken your money off your hands. Yes, that's unfortunately the right phrase. So you try to, we do tend to think of money in a different way to everything else, you know, and it's funny. And part of the financial knowledge thing as well is that we seem to be a bit embarrassed if we don't know. And I think we need to get over that. It's not embarrassing. I don't know how you guys do your job, you know, so why would you necessarily know how I do mine? And it's a funny sort of stigma that's attached as well. Anyway, and just one more thing I wanted to say, actually, if I may, is that there is something in Dubai, maybe just a UAE thing, which are savings bonds. So rather like, I mean, if you're in the UK, we have premium bonds. I'm not sure in the US, to be honest. And I did look into these. If you're slightly concerned that if you just put your money in a bank account, it's too accessible, you know, which is true, you can easily get it out, unless you do a long-term deposit. But it might suit you better to just, if you Google it, and I'm sure you'll find it, the sort of national savings bonds which are issued, and they do usually pay you a little bit of interest. There is a charge. But I think it's worth, you know, sometimes. The money safe from yourself.
Yes, and you know what's interesting that you mentioned, what kind of rang the bell is when you said, when people, you know, why would somebody who's a senior, you know, seasoned professional who, you know, has been around and knows what's going on in the world is kind of drawn to hand over their money? And that to me screams, you know, that mental health impact, in a sense that we're so sometimes stressed because we're not sure what that next step is. So sometimes we're not even thinking clearly, which is one part of that financial well-being piece, right? So it's like we're desperately waiting for somebody to come and take it off our hands. And I think, that's not being able to take a moment to reflect and say, is this the right decision? We're just mainly thinking, I don't want to feel this way anymore. It's too much heaviness on my mind. Let me just let it go. And that's very much
one of my friends, is a senior accountant. She's a partner in a big accountancy firm. There's nothing she doesn't know about accounting. But she's a good example of how this happened. And another thing to check, actually, as well as the costs, is any exit fees, as well as going in fees, and any lock-in period. So she's a high earner, and she's paying a considerable amount of money every month to save for her retirement, which is great. But she's locked in, and she can't get out of it. The underlying investments are rubbish. They're not performing very well at all. And she wanted to take the money out for a better investment opportunity, but she's locked in. She's literally locked in for 25 years. And if she stops paying her monthly amount, the penalties, I can't even remember now because it was a few years ago, she loses half of her money, at least. I mean, again, it's just terrible. So there's lots of, there are things, just some key things to bear in mind, as I say, charging in and out and lock-in periods and that sort of thing. And this is again where just a little bit of financial knowledge, just this sort of thing can be a massive help, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, pay attention to the fine print. Look at the lock-in, what buy in, buy out. These are all important. Absolutely.
Quite often they give me something to sign, and they say they think I can't see the line where I put my signature, and I'm like, no, I'm reading it. I'm reading the contract. That saved me a few times, because sometimes you do say, oh, what's that? 10%. Then, it's worth taking the time.
We have one question. So at this time, I want to bring your attention to the question box. So please, for the audience, drop your questions at this time. We have a few minutes left. And of course, make sure you also get in touch with Zoe. This is her website. You can just scan it. You can also look us up for further resources. You can just scan the QR codes that are on your screens. And so as the other questions come in, I do have a question. So credit card debt, and that's something we talked about before as well, and that is a concern for many people. If you had maybe some, quick tips or tools for people, how do you work on paying off that credit card debt? So if, those individuals, so let's say maybe saving is that's not on the radar right now. Maybe right now on the radar for us, it's simply to align our finances and pay off the credit card debt. What would those individuals do?
It's very important to pay off your credit card debt before you do anything else. The credit cards, again, if you actually look to see, because not everybody does, how much interest they're charging you, very often it can be up to 30%. Now let's bear in mind that you get zero at the moment on a bank account. There's a massive gap, between, and 30% is a lot of money to be paying back. It's an almost insurmountable mountain that you will end up climbing. And my only advice really is, again, going back to the budget and seeing actually, and in this case, if you're concerned about credit card debt, I would try to list your whole expenditure every month, because it's important then that you have a very good handle, on what exactly is going out. And seeing how much you can afford, what you can go without, and it might be tough for a couple of years, to be honest, but it's much better to go through some short-term pain, than some long-term agony, basically, and just try to bear that in mind as well. We're very much living in a live for today, and I get that too. But we can't afford to do that with our finances. That's not an attitude that that we can have, unfortunately. And so always pay off the minimum. In my view, always pay off the minimum, because if you're not even paying off the minimum, the interest, that will be mounting up. I've known some people who can't even afford to pay the interest, let alone any of the capital back. So if you can't, it's just excruciatingly painful. And so really it's vitally important. Forget saving and investing, if you haven't got anything left for that. Please try and pay down, even if it's just a small additional amount above the minimum. Every little helps. And I mean, that should be like everybody's saying, every little definitely helps. There's no quick fix either, unfortunately, but I think that's the best thing to do. See what you can go without. And I think you'll get a sense of fulfillment. You can feel proud of yourself, and that's lovely. If you suddenly find, oh, actually, I always use with the girls, we're devils for cushions, candles, and cappuccinos. If we can just stop, and I think boys, pretty much on the gadgets and that sort of thing as well. If we can just make small steps, and again, that would be my advice. Don't set yourself a massive goal. Oh, I need to pay it off within whatever. Make it manageable, because otherwise you're just not going to do it, and you'll stop altogether. Make it manageable, small steps.
Absolutely, we love it. That's the best methodology, right? Is the small steps that lead to achieving your goals in a way that actually sticks, in a way that actually brings results long lasting. Absolutely. A related question to this. So somebody asked, would you recommend taking a personal loan in Dubai to clear credit card amounts? Please suggest.
Well, potentially yes. Because of course a personal loan, roughly might be about 10%, which is obviously better than 30%. So just from that viewpoint alone, yes, borrowing, it's not really adding to your debt as long as you do use that personal loan to pay off your credit card. Because again, I've known people take out a little bit extra and they put some towards the credit card, and then they bought a car with the rest of it. I may be stating the obvious, but please don't do that, because you're just adding obviously to your debt as well. If you're going to do that, yeah. Again, sometimes it's difficult to advise in these sorts of scenarios, because it does keep coming back for me to what your personal circumstances are. So this is very much an off the top of my head general reply. If you can reduce the amount of interest that you're paying on your debt by doing that, then it would appear to make sense. Yeah.
Okay. And somebody also said, would you mind sharing with us some good application tools which can be used for free to budget your income expenses? Yes, I'm sure we can share some. You guys, everybody will receive the recording as well as a follow-up email from us after 24 hours after the webinar, including links to Zoe's website as well. And we have another question, and we have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to be taking the last couple of questions. Is Bitcoin an investment? I'm not sure if you know much about that, Zoe, but what do you think about Bitcoin? Or Yvonne, maybe you know a little bit as well.
Yeah. It's not an investment, it's a gamble. Yeah. Really. I mean, if you want a quick answer, that's my quick answer.
Yeah.
If you've got a little bit of spare cash, and I really mean spare cash, that you're not going to miss, then by all means have a little punt, as we would say. But I would view it in the same way as you would put some money on a horse. And I'm not being flippant. It's too early days for us to know how that is going to pan out. And as you know, there was a lot of excitement about it a few years ago, which has sort of died down. It's still very volatile. And we're still not really sure, where it's going. So, yeah, I would look on it as money that you can afford to lose, for sure. And if not, then amazing. If it does work, but I wouldn't recommend it, I'm afraid.
So listen, we have learned, I've personally learned quite a bit, and I've known you for a few years now that you were doing things in Dubai, and every time I learn something new from you, And to be honest, outside of the US, you would be the financial person I would go to. So I don't know anybody in the UAE. Unfortunately, I cannot recommend. Maybe Yvonne knows some others as well. But what we've sort of learned here today is that if you're more in a younger generation, 20s, 30s, start thinking about retirement. It's important. You know, if you have kids in that age, make sure that you're educating them. It's not taught in school. If you're more in 30s, 40s, 50s and above, it's really time to start being a little bit cautious, but also aware that yes, we might live longer, but we need to start to also keep in mind, you know, those safe investments. And, you know, don't keep up with the Joneses, because the Joneses are in debt. So
Absolutely
they are.
right. Absolutely right. Spot on.
Yeah,
exactly.
So find a formula that works for you. The key is to educate yourself and not to be ashamed to raise your hand and say, listen, I don't know where to start. You know, where can I get the information? Who can help me? We have a resource here, of course, Zoe with us. And, you know, again, doing your homework and just getting educated on this topic.
Just very quickly, Elena, that the Talking Money Matters is actually just a holding page. I've only just set it up at the moment. And really that's something that I'm offering to employers who want to help their staff, with financial wellness. So it's really a program for companies to offer their staff. And I've only just set it up, so it's just a one-page thing at the moment, because I'm not actually giving financial advice as such. But I do love the opportunity, so thank you very much, just to hopefully give a few little nuggets of information that might help some people to make some positive steps in the right direction.
Yes, I'm sure it will.
Thank you very much, Zoe. It was lovely to have you with us. Really, we have learned quite a lot today.
Hey, good. Thank
everyone
you so much.
Thank you, and until next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.